Now, I'm not going to waste your time, and I'll cut straight to the point. Florida, the Sunshine State, the retirement dream for millions, the escape plan for thousands fleeing cold northern winters, the promise of paradise with no income tax, cheap homes, and endless beaches. But in 2025, that dream is cracking. No, it's collapsing. Behind the glossy images of Miami condos and Disney vacations, there are Florida towns right now where home prices have cratered 60, even 70%. Entire neighborhoods where you can buy a house for less than the cost of a used truck. And still nobody wants them. This isn't a correction. It isn't a normal cycle. It's a full-scale housing disaster. Insurance companies fleeing. Jobs evaporating. Climate change rewriting the map of livable Florida. And investors circling like vultures, waiting to pick apart the bones of dying communities. Today, we're going to expose it all. The 10 Florida towns where the dream has died. Where home prices are so low you'll think it's a scam. But it's not. It's worse. Let's start the countdown. Clewiston sits on the southern edge of Lake Okeechobee. For decades, it was proudly known as America's sweetest town, built and sustained by the sugar industry. The U.S. Sugar Corporation wasn't just an employer here. It was the backbone of the entire community. Families worked the fields, schools thrived, and homes held steady value. But that stability is gone. In 2007, the median home in Clewiston sold for around $225,000. Today, the average sits closer to $70,000. That's not a dip, it's a free fall. And it reflects more than just a number on a chart. It's families leaving town, neighborhoods hollowing out, and businesses shuttering one by one. The sugar industry has been shrinking, slashing jobs, and driving workers away. Unemployment climbed, and with fewer opportunities, young people simply didn't stay. Clewiston High School, once packed with nearly 900 students, now has less than half that. A place that once rallied around Friday night football can barely field a team. And then comes the insurance crisis. Major carriers, State Farm, Allstate, Progressive, have all pulled out of Hendry County. The few insurers still here charge $6,000 to $7,000 a year to cover a house that might only be worth $75,000. Think about that. You're paying almost 10% of your home's value every single year just for insurance. That math doesn't work for working-class families. Many are choosing to go uninsured, gambling against disaster, because they can't afford anything else. Drive through downtown Clewiston today, and you'll see the signs, literally. For sale signs sitting for months. Empty storefronts where local shops used to thrive. Streets quieter than they've ever been. The town's proud slogan still hangs at the city limits. America's sweetest town. But talk to the people who stayed, and you'll hear something different. They'll tell you the sweetness is gone. They'll tell you the dream is fading. Clewiston isn't just struggling. It's crumbling. And the scary part? This is only number 10 on our list. Palatka sits on the banks of the St. Johns River, just an hour south of Jacksonville. Once upon a time, it was called the Gem City of the St. Johns. A river town with promise, industry, and tourism. But if you drive through today, that shine is gone. The median home here peaked at nearly $180,000 before the last crash. Today, you can find homes selling for under $90,000, sometimes even less. On paper, that looks like affordability. In reality, it's a warning sign. Low prices in Palatka don't mean opportunity. They mean people don't want to live here. Industry has dried up. Jobs that once sustained the town, paper mills, manufacturing plants, and river shipping, have either automated or disappeared. The unemployment rate runs higher than the state average, and wages sit well below Florida's big metros. Young people grow up in Palatka, but they don't stay. They leave for Jacksonville, Orlando, anywhere with a future. And the ones left behind, they're dealing with the same nightmare we see across Florida. Insurance premiums that don't make sense. Families are being asked to pay $5,000 to $6,000 a year to insure homes worth $85,000. That's the equivalent of buying the house all over again every 15 years, just to keep it covered. Schools have seen enrollment plummet. Downtown, once lined with mom-and-pop shops and restaurants, looks more like a ghost town. Storefronts sit empty, boarded up, or converted into secondhand stores. The promise of riverfront tourism never materialized. Flood risk from the St. Johns keeps investors away, and every major storm brings damage the city struggles to repair. Palatka is a town stuck in limbo. Too far from major growth, too fragile to attract development, and too battered by economic decline to recover on its own. Once a gem, now forgotten. And it's just the ninth stop on our list of Florida's collapsing housing markets. Ocala, in Central Florida, is famous for one thing: horses. It's called the horse capital of the world, home to sprawling ranches, rolling pastures, and thoroughbred breeding farms that built its reputation. For years, Ocala felt insulated from the boom-and-bust cycles of Miami or Tampa. Land was cheap, homes were affordable, and the equestrian industry kept money flowing. But things have changed. Back in 2006, the median home price in Ocala hit nearly $200,000. Today, it's hovering around $150,000, with many properties selling for far less. On the surface, that looks like stability. But peel back the numbers and you see a different picture. Prices aren't holding because of strength. They're stuck because demand has dried up. Young families aren't moving here. Wages lag far behind the rest of the state, and job growth outside of the horse industry is minimal. The cost of living, once a selling point, is now crushed by rising insurance and property taxes. Residents report insurance quotes of $4,000 to $6,000 annually for modest homes valued under $160,000. For retirees on fixed incomes, that's devastating. And while Ocala's identity has always been horses, that industry isn't bulletproof. Rising costs of land, feed, and insurance have forced many smaller ranches to sell off or shut down entirely. Subdivisions creep into pastures, but they don't fill with buyers. Many developments sit half-built, caught between rising construction costs and falling demand. Downtown Ocala tells the same story. Some revitalization projects brought in restaurants and boutiques, but foot traffic is inconsistent. Walk a few blocks away, and you'll find shuttered businesses and neglected buildings. The divide between new money and old decline is sharp. Flooding risk is another hidden issue. While Ocala isn't on the coast, heavy rains have led to drainage problems and water damage in neighborhoods that weren't designed for today's climate. Insurers know it, which means higher premiums. Ocala was once marketed as Florida's hidden gem, a peaceful inland alternative to the chaos of Miami or Orlando. But today, that gem is losing its shine. The horses are still here, but the people? They're leaving. Homestead sits at the southern tip of Miami-Dade County, the last major stop before the Florida Keys. On paper, it should be thriving, close enough to Miami for commuters, surrounded by farmland, with access to both Biscayne National Park and Everglades National Park. For years, developers pitched it as Miami's affordable alternative. But the reality? Homestead is cracking under the weight of problems it can't control. In 2007, the median home price here was over $250,000. Today, despite Miami's booming market, Homestead's prices hover closer to $180,000. Compared to Miami Beach condos, that sounds cheap. But cheap in Homestead doesn't mean opportunity. It means people don't want to risk. Hurricanes have battered this town again and again. Andrew in 1992 nearly wiped it off the map. Since then, every major storm leaves scars. Insurance companies see Homestead as ground zero for risk, which translates to massive premiums. Homeowners report paying $6,000, $7,000, even $8,000 a year in insurance costs. For a house worth under $200,000, that's insane. Then there's the economy. Homestead's job market leans heavily on agriculture and low-wage service work. Wages are low, opportunities limited, and many residents have to commute nearly an hour north into Miami for decent jobs. Factor in rising gas prices and tolls, and that affordability advantage vanishes. The military base, Homestead Air Reserve, provides some stability, but not enough to offset the losses elsewhere. Meanwhile, schools struggle with overcrowding and underfunding as families leave for better districts further north. And development? It's a double-edged sword. Yes, new subdivisions are popping up, but many sit half-empty. Buyers are wary of flooding, insurance headaches, and rising crime rates. Drive through Homestead today, and you'll see the story clearly. Brand new gated communities right next to neglected blocks with abandoned homes. For sale signs fading in the sun. Strip malls with more vacancies than tenants. Homestead was supposed to be the affordable gateway to Miami and the Keys. Instead, it's become a warning of what happens when climate risk, low wages, and high insurance collide. And it's only number 7. Fort Pierce, on Florida's Treasure Coast, has history, charm, and one of the state's most important ports. For years, it was marketed as an affordable coastal escape, cheaper than Miami or Fort Lauderdale, but still offering that beach lifestyle. Retirees came here, families came here, and investors quietly picked up waterfront property. But the numbers tell a different story today. Back in 2006, the median home price in Fort Pierce was close to $220,000. After the crash, it bottomed out near $90,000. And while prices have recovered some, the growth has stalled. Today, you can still find homes under $150,000, something almost unheard of along Florida's coast. That's not a deal. That's a red flag. Insurance is the biggest hammer hitting Fort Pierce. Located in a high-risk hurricane zone, the cost to insure even modest homes is outrageous. Families report $6,000 to $8,000 annual premiums on houses worth $130,000. For many, that math just doesn't work. And with major carriers pulling out of Florida entirely, the options are shrinking fast. The local economy isn't strong enough to absorb those costs. Fort Pierce has struggled with poverty rates higher than the state average. Jobs are concentrated in low-paying sectors, retail, agriculture, and service industries, leaving little cushion for families already stretched thin. Even the port, once seen as a lifeline for jobs and growth, hasn't delivered the transformation many hoped for. Walk downtown, and you'll see both sides of the story. A few revitalized blocks with restaurants, art galleries, and waterfront parks. But go just a few streets further, and you'll find boarded-up homes, abandoned lots, and struggling neighborhoods. Add in the climate factor, repeated flooding, coastal erosion, and the ever-present threat of stronger storms, and the future looks grim.